Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Thank you so much, Nilesh Prabhu. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Astrasharshi Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Astrasharshi Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem So Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakun Radhakurun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories Shri Prabhupada.
No, I may add, it's generally seen as impolite to sit so far away from the speaker. Usually it's like, if someone's giving a class and there's plenty of room next to them and someone's half a mile away, it's seen as disrespectful. So Naga, you should come closer. Aditya, come closer. Maybe you can sit over here too. It's also seen as not so respectful to sit on a seat if you're not senior to the speaker too. So Eric, if you'd like to sit, you could just get a red mat and sit over here too. We're going to hear from the speaker, but you can sit over here. Sorry, yeah, good, I see. Yeah. Thank you.
Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva.
By the way, I'm not talking about Trivita Prabhu. He's sitting there on the bench, that's why.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jaya Mudirayat. Nasta Prayasa Bhadreshu. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavat Uttama Shloke. Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll be reading a few verses and a summary. Krishna. Thank you. So we'll finish the last verse from the 5th chapter, text 28.
One other thing, sorry, in case anyone's unaware. I told Eric to sit here, but I should have also told him that he shouldn't sit with his back directly toward the beaters. So it's kind of a tricky thing in the temple room when the speaker's here, beaters are there, and the men are supposed to be on this side. That's a tricky thing to balance. But anyway, so that's thank you for
Translation. By the grace of the Lord, those who hear about the activities of Maharaj Ambarish, the great devotee, certainly becomes liberated or become devotees without delay. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 9th canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Durvasa Muni's Life Spared. So chapter 6, titled The Downfall of Saubhari Muni. After describing the descendants of Maharaj Ambarish, Śukadeva Gosvāmī described all the kings from Śukadeva to Māndhātā. And in this connection, he also described how the great sage Saubhari married the daughters of Māndhātā. Maharaj Ambarish had 3 sons, named Virupa, Ketuman, and Shambhu. The sons of Virupa was Prishadasva, and his son was Ratitara. Ratitara had no sons, but when he requested the favor of the great sage Angira, the sage begot several sons in the womb of Ratitara's wife. When the sons were born, they became the dynasty of Angira Rishi and of Ratitara. The son of Manu was Ikshvaku, who had 100 sons, of whom Vikukshi, Nimi, and Dandaka were the eldest. The sons of Maharaj Ikshvaku became kings of different parts of the world. Because of violating sacrificial rules and regulations, one of these sons, Vikukshi, was banished from the kingdom. By the mercy of Vasishtha and the power of mystic yoga, Maharaj Ikshvaku attained liberation after giving up his material body. When Maharaj Ikshvaku expired, his son Vikukshi returned and took charge of the kingdom. He performed various types of sacrifices, and thus he pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This Vikukshi later became celebrated as Śukadeva. Vikukshi's son fought with the demons for the sake of the demigods, and because of his valuable service, he became famous as Puranjaya, Indravaha, and Karatukshta. The son of Puranjaya was Anena. The son of Anena was Prithu, and the son of Prithu was Vishvagandhi. The son of Vishvagandhi was Chandra. The son of Chandra was Yuvanasva, and his son was Shravasta, who constructed Shravasti Puri. The son of Shravasta was Brihavasva. Brihavasa's son was Kuvalayasva, killed a demon named Dandu, and thus he became celebrated as Dandu Mara, the killer of Dandu. The sons of the killer Dandu was Dridasva, Kapilasva, and Bhadrasva, who also had thousands of other sons, but they burned to ashes in the fire emanating from Dandu. The son of Dridasva was Haryasva. The son of Haryasva was Nikumba. The son of Nikumba was Bahulasva. And the son of Bahulashva was Krishavsva. The son of Krishashva was Senajit, and his son was Yuvanashva. Yuvanashva. Yuvanashva married 100 wives, but he had no sons, and therefore he entered the forest. In the forest, the sages performed a sacrifice known as Indra Yagya on his behalf. Once, however, the king became so thirsty in the forest that he drank the water kept for performing yagya. Consequently, after some time, a son came forth from the right side of his abdomen. The son, who was very beautiful, was crying to drink breast milk, and Indra gave the child his index finger to suck. Thus the son became known as Māndhātā. In due course of time, Yuvanashva achieved perfection by performing austerities. Thereafter, Māndhātā became the emperor and ruled the earth, which consists of 7 islands, Thieves and rogues were very much afraid of this powerful king, and therefore the king was known as Trasadasyu, meaning one who is very fearful to rogues and thieves. Māndhātā begot sons in the womb of his wife, Bindumati. These sons were Purukutsa, Ambarish, and Muchukunda. These 3 sons had 50 sisters, all of whom became wives of the great sage known as Saubhari. In this connection, Śukadeva Gosvāmī described the history of Saubhari Muni, who, because of sensual agitation caused by fish, fell from his yoga and wanted to marry all the daughters of Māndhātā for sexual pleasure. Later, Saubhari Muni became very regretful. Thus he accepted the order of vānaprastha, performed very severe austerities, and thus attained perfection. In this regard, Śukadeva Gosvāmī described how Saubhari Muni's wives also became perfect. Text 1. I'll just read the translation. Śukadeva Gosvāmī said, O Maharaj Parikshit, Ambarish had 3 sons named Virupa, Ketuman, and Shambhu. From Virupa came a son named Prishavasva, and from Prishavasva came a son named Ratitara. Okay, text 2. Ratitara ya prajasya Bharyayam Tanvati Tantave Artaha Angira Janayam Asa Brahmavarchasvinaha Sutan Ratitarasya Prajasya Bharyayam Tanvatir Itiha Angira Janayam Asa Brahmavarchasvina Sutan Ratitarasya Prajasya Bharyayam Tanvatir Tihita Angirajanayam Asa Brahma Varchasvina Sutan Ratitarasya Prajasya Bharyayam Tantave Irtita Angirajanayam Asa Brahma Varchasvina Sutan Joe, you want to try? No. Evelyn? Anyone online would like to chant? Okay. Ratitarasya of Ratitara. Ratitara. Aprajasya, who had no sons. Bharyayam, unto his wife. Tantave, for increasing offspring. Artitaha, being requested. Angiraha, the great sage Angira. Janayam asa, caused to take birth. Brahma Varchasvinaha, who had Brahminical qualities. Sutan, sons. Translation and purport by Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Ratitara had no sons, and therefore he requested the great sage Angira to beget sons for him. Because of this request, Angira begot sons in the womb of Ratitara's wife. All these sons were born with Brahminical prowess. Purport. In the Vedic age, a man was sometimes called upon to beget sons in the womb of a lesser man's wife, for the sake of better progeny. In such an instance, the woman is compared to an agricultural field. A person possessing an agricultural field may employ another person to produce food grains from it. But because the grains are produced from the land, they are considered the property of the owner of the land. Similarly, a woman was sometimes allowed to be impregnated by someone other than her husband, but the sons born of her would then become her husband's sons. Such sons were called Kshetra Jata. Because Ratitara had no sons, he took advantage of this method. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapanantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sita Devi Pranamame Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatri Bhischa Kripasanubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavinabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So from the 5th chapter, the last verse, Śukadeva Gosvāmī is giving benedictions to anyone who hears and reads the pastimes of Ambarish Maharaj. And I know this is a very common theme with a lot of our great acharyas. For example, after singing the Jagannath Ashtakam, there's also a benediction that one will be able to go to Lord Vishnu's abode. And in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's also found there, as well as the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Madhya Lila, chapter 4, text 212, says, "One who hears this narration with faith and devotion attains the treasure of love of Godhead at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna." And then the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he writes, "Also, one who hears this narration 3 times will become very reputable, even if he is not recognized in society, and he will become a great scholar if he is illiterate." In other words, hearing the narrations of Prithu Maharaj is so auspicious that it drives away all bad luck. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is very auspicious. When the sages of Naimisharanya, when they were hearing the questions of Parikshit Maharaj, they congratulated him. They said, "Your questions are very glorious because they benefit everyone. The person who hears, the person who listens, and anyone who is within the assembly." So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's so merciful and kind that he gave this benediction to all of us. And all we have to do is just continue to read. Srila Prabhupada would use the example of jaundice. Has anyone here ever gotten jaundice before? You had jaundice? Can you explain some of the symptoms or the...
You want me to explain something?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Jaundice is the condition where your eyes get yellow and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's usually, almost always, associated with hepatitis. Mm-hmm. And so in Prabhupada's books, he never uses the word hepatitis. He always says jaundice, meaning the hepatitis which has the symptom of the yellowish of the eyes. Yeah. I had a serious case of hepatitis and I was in the hospital for a month back in '69. So, and I remember trips to India where you'd see people, devotees that come down with it. And so their eyes were yellow like that, you could always tell.
When Srila Prabhupada mentioned jaundice, he would always talk about the taste. Yeah. Do you remember? Yeah.
Yeah, sugar didn't taste sweet, like that. It wasn't tasty at all. It was something he didn't want to taste. So.
Srila Prabhupada says that the cure for jaundice is to take more hot sugar cane juice. So the very thing that tastes very bitter is actually the cure. So similar in our disease condition, our material consciousness, we don't want to hear about Krishna. We don't want to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We want to hear mundane things, I was telling Joe the other day, there's an elderly man who I always see at Balboa Park, and he always has with him the latest newspaper. And I asked him, when you come back, tell me the good news that you find in the newspaper. So he said, sure. He came back and I said, tell me the good news. He said, the good news is the women's soccer team won from this country. That was his conclusion, and that's the most prominent thing that he could remember from the newspaper. So Srila Prabhupada says that in this material world, people like to read the newspapers, and there's that pastime also of, I think His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswāmī. He was going to be enlisted, to the army, drafted to the army. Then he asked Srila Prabhupada, can you describe the spiritual world? And Srila Prabhupada says something like, it's very beautiful, there's wish-fulfilling trees, and then he said, and there's no draft. Meaning you won't be forced to do what you don't want to do in the spiritual world. So in this material world, everyone is attracted to mundane sounds, mundane love. Everyone is attracted to mundane sense pleasures. But the soul actually wants to hear pastimes of Krishna. But in our disease condition, we don't want to hear so much. Sometimes I fall victim to this too. Late night, and even when we're hearing such nectar from Srimad Bhagavatam, we may kind of start dozing off, But actually, Prithu Maharaj, he was such a great devotee that he didn't sleep, he didn't eat, he didn't drink for 7 days and 7 nights. Parikshit Maharaj. Who did I say? Prithu. Okay, I meant to say Parikshit. And then so Parikshit Maharaj, he said, I won't feel tired, I won't feel hungry or tired, just keep telling me about Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna and his pastimes and his devotees. So this mood of hearing is such a wonderful quality to develop, you know. I try to imbibe that myself. So whenever there is a class or speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam from a devotee, I would like to hear from them. Srila Prabhupada, he says that this material world is full of dangers at every step, but a devotee has no fear because devotional service is so auspicious that it automatically counteracts all kinds of bad luck. In the first canto, the sages of Naimisharanya, they were saying the characteristics of Kali Yuga, that we don't live very long. Prayeno paisaha sabya kalawasme yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagyahi upadrutaha. Then in this age of Kali, men almost have but short lives. They're misguided, lazy, and above all, always disturbed. So you don't have to look very far to know that bad luck is following us. I was speaking to someone at the lounge yesterday, and he was telling me his misfortune, you know. He got into drug addiction. He fell victim to a woman who was not faithful to him, and so on. Yeah. Maybe all the men can relate to it. Hare Krishna. But these pastimes, they're meant to encourage us to develop attachment for hearing and glorifying the Lord or His devotees. So I'll end with that, and I'll move to the second part, which is text 2. Mukunda and I, we were in the bathroom, and I was telling him how a very difficult verse, you know, hearing this, that a woman is allowed to get impregnated by another man besides her husband. And in Kali Yuga, it sounds very wrong, because in this age it is for, it's in the CC, Adi Lila, it's described there are 5 acts that are forbidden. The offering of a horse in sacrifice, the offering of a cow in sacrifice, the acceptance of the order of sannyas, the offering of oblations of flesh to the forefathers, and a man's begetting children in his brother's wife. In Vedic times, this was allowed because the man was impotent, or maybe the woman wasn't able to produce. And this king, he was burdened with a very heavy dilemma. He wasn't able to produce a child for the next kingdom. And a lot of kings in the Bhagavatam, they describe that this is actually one of their biggest problems, that they can't produce a son. Who is the famous one? King Chitraketu. I think it's described he had 10 million wives. He married 10 million wives in order to try to beget a child, but he wasn't able to. So then, I think it's Saubhari Muni that was the same one who gave him that fruit to give to his, or milk to give to his wife. And then the other wives were so envious that the king was spending so much time with this wife, this queen, that they ended up poisoning the child. What was the name of this child? Huh? No, Harsha Shoka. It means one who is both the cause of lamentation and jubilation. Srila Prabhupada, sometimes he would say, some people think it's better to have a blind uncle than no uncle at all. So the king, Chitraketu Maharaj, he also thought the same thing. Better if I have a son, even if he may be disrespectful or may not listen to me, At least I'll have a son to continue my dynasty. But he was so frustrated, not frustrated, but he was enlightened by the soul of his son after Narada Muni brought this soul back to its body, that he went on, did he go on pilgrimage or he was just going on tour? Does anyone remember? This was when he saw Lord Shiva with Parvati on his lap.
Oh, that was later. He was flying.
Yeah. Was it because I think he was going on tour? Anyway, so King Ketu, although he was at first attached to his son, due to spiritual knowledge or enlightenment, he was able to give up lamentation for his dead son. And so the queens as well, they were enlightened by Narada Muni's bringing the soul back to that body. When I was reading the summary, it reminded me of a pastime. This is by Devi Shakti Devi Dasi. She writes, in India, sometimes Srila Prabhupada was invited to attend programs in people's homes. Sometimes these peoples are very pious and become devotees by such contact with Srila Prabhupada. In some cases, they mainly wanted material blessings, health and prosperity, in return for hosting a sadhu and his followers. On one occasion, Srila Prabhupada, along with 20 of his devotees, was sitting in a man's living room while the man introduced each member of his family. You guys remember this? The man said, "This is my wife," and the wife came forward, bowing slightly and folding her palms. "And this is my older son, and this is my daughter, and this is my younger son." Each came forward and said his name while Prabhupada nodded genially. "This is the husband of my daughter," the man continued, "and these are their children." Both quickly appeared and exited. Finally, all the members had been introduced and had departed, momentarily leaving Srila Prabhupada alone in the room with his devotees. In a confidential aside, Prabhupada spoke quietly to his disciples. Does anyone remember what he said? This is my sex life. So the man, he was very proud of his family. This is my son, my daughter. But Srila Prabhupada, he just regarded it as, this is my sex life. Srila Prabhupada, he says, my Guru Maharaj used to say that I am a brahmachari sannyasi, but if I can bring Krishna conscious child, I can beget 100 children. I have no objection. So we have many wonderful Mahajans as well as acharyas that were grihastas. Srila Prabhupada says that the children should be so trained so that they take no more birth. They can produce hundreds of children, it doesn't matter, but they must be responsible that the children should be saved. This is the last birth, no more birth. I'll train the child in such a way that next life he's going to Krishna, back home, back to Godhead. This is a parent's duty. So, if a devotee, what's the right word, capable or believes that they can, what's that verse? Is that the one that says one should never be a demigod, a father? That's the one? Yeah. If they cannot deliver the dependence from the cycle of birth and death. And Srila Prabhupada says that is true contraception. That you may produce a child, but they're also able to understand and to make more devotees, and this is their last life in the material world. Srila Prabhupada, he would stress the importance of being properly situated in your ashram. And he wasn't so happy when his sannyasis would fall down back to a sex life. But Srila Prabhupada, he was so kind. He says, those who have fallen down, let them marry. Live like respectable gentlemen. He said, what is wrong with being a grihasta? He said, better go and speak philosophy in your grihasta dress, Rather, I shall be glad to see that up-to-date gentlemen with tilak and shika are speaking. So Srila Prabhupada, he encouraged, if one cannot be a brahmachari, please get married. And if you have to get married, try to be Krishna conscious at the same time. Sometimes I hear devotees marrying, outside of Krishna consciousness. And in the Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, I'm not a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, I'm not a Brahmachari, Grahastha, vānaprastha, or sannyas. He says, if you know the science of Krishna consciousness, you can be guru, not the dress. And Srila Prabhupada points out that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was a Grahastha, and then he entered sannyas life. And then Srila Prabhupada gave a few examples as well. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a householder. Yudhishthira Maharaj was a householder. Prahlad Maharaj. When I was in Rajasthan with Maharaj, the temple president, he asked Maharaj if he can have a meeting with the brahmacharis there. There's probably like 30 brahmacharis. And they all had questions for Maharaj, So Maharaj sat in the front, and the first thing one of the brahmacharis asked when he raised his head was, how can I remain strong in the brahmachari ashram? And it's a very common question, And Maharaj said, first, you have to be honest with yourself. And then he said, you don't want to suppress, wanting to get married. And then you're 50 years old thinking, man, I should have got married. Because at that time it's too late. And then you won't be properly situated in the brahmachari ashram. So we have to be honest. If we feel like we can be brahmacharis, Prabhupada said that would be the best, because you would save, I've heard devotees say 50%, 75% of the trouble. Yeah. I'm almost done, sorry. So that will save both the man and the women, and this is the idea. So a wife is known as Dharma Patni, the one who supports and shares the moral and spiritual duties of the husband. I've heard one lecture, Srila Prabhupada calls it a spiritual partnership. Okay, I'll end with this, maybe to get some ideas. So Srila Prabhupada, he would quote Chanika Pandit sometimes. And I don't know, for some reason I always remember this. He says there are 4 families in 4 enemies in a family or a household. Does anyone know what those are? We'll start with the father. How is the father an enemy? A father who is a debtor. Srila Prabhupada explained in the Manu Samhita, as well as even in India today, that if the father dies with a great debt, the son has to pay off that debt. Is that still current in India? No? Okay. Okay. But Srila Prabhupada mentioned that. And then what about the mother? How is the mother an enemy? If she marries again. Srila Prabhupada would sometimes say an unchaste mother. All right. What about the wife? How is the wife an enemy? A beautiful wife. A beautiful wife is considered to be an enemy. And what about the son? How is the son an enemy? Fool or ignorant son? So although we may have a father, a mother, a beautiful wife, or a son, if they fall into these 4 categories, Chanika Pandit says they are actually enemies of the household. So a father who is a debtor, an unchaste mother, a beautiful wife, and a foolish son. Okay, I'm sorry for my sporadic class. I didn't have that much time to study and prepare. Any questions or thoughts? Eric, what was your question?
Forgetting. Just one comment on that verse you quoted, prayana alpayashak sobhya. That prayana, which means almost always, it carries over to all of the qualities.
Yeah.
So we're short-lived, we're unlucky, we're misguided, when we're always disturbed. So that's almost always disturbed. So just one note on that when you read that verse, which you can see it's true.
I was listening to a lecture by Srila Prabhupada a few days ago, and it said even if one is interested in spiritual life, he's easily misguided. There's so many bogus philosophies and gurus out there. So even if one is interested or sincerely searching, they may be misled in this Kali Yuga. Mataji, you have any thoughts?
I don't have anything.
What year was marriage even invented?
I don't think that's a really useful question.
Well, it's in the Vedas, the kings everyone's getting married since time immemorial. Even the demons got married. It's interesting because this whole boyfriend and girlfriend business, even the demons didn't follow this, At least they married. And even if they kidnapped someone like Ravana with Sita, he at least wanted to marry her, So at least they're following some type of dharmic injunction,
Marriage has existed as long as humans have existed.
Yeah.
It comes along with humans.
Yeah. Prabhupada says that's the difference between human society and animal society. Humans, that's why there's marriages, In the animal society, there's no such thing. But they do try to show off to the other, Whether it's a bird trying to show off its feathers and colors or a blowfish. So similarly, in the human society, the man is trying to show off to the woman, Look at my bank account, look at my car, look at my muscles, Look at my PhD degree. But Mukunda Charnaprabhu, he was saying, we're taught not to be so attracted by these material qualifications, Okay, thank you so much for your time and attention. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.